Welcome to the Spring Hills Podcast. My name is Garrett Elliott. I'm the worship pastor here at Spring Hills, and I've got a unique episode for you today. And what I'm going to do here for a moment is keep you guessing as to why and how this episode is unique before I'm actually going to tell you why it's unique. So, as you know, small groups are coming up. My wife and I are going to be leading a small group where we watch an episode of the TV series The Chosen, and then we're going to discuss the biblical truths within it. Now, if you haven't seen The Chosen, I highly recommend it. It's awesome. It's a show that walks us through the ministry of Jesus, and Season 1 specifically shows a few of the well-known miracles that Jesus performed, as well as how he gathered some of his disciples. It also tackles a conversation between Jesus and Nicodemus that we find in John 3:16, which is one of the most well-known verses from Scripture. So, if you haven't watched it, highly recommend it. You can watch it for free on the Chosen app. You can download that in the App Store. Now, the reason I tell you all of this is because today I have the privilege of interviewing Justen Overlander. Now, Justen is the associate producer of The Chosen, and he's going to spend the hour with me. He's going to let me pick his brain about the show and about the upcoming Season 2, which is set to release in just a few months. So Justen is here on Zoom with me. Justen, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. So you are the associate producer of The Chosen, but before we get to the series, I want to get to know you a bit more. So let's start with some of the basics. Tell us about yourself, your family, where are you from, how'd you get into the film industry, stuff like that.
Well, yeah, and I'll play off of what you said first about the show. Is if we want people to watch it and they get bored with me, let's let them know right off the bat. It's an app. You download the Chosen app from Google Play or the App Store. It's all free. First season is there for free. We're shooting Season 2 right now, so there's 8 episodes already. We're going to have another 8 coming out this year, 2021, and it's all right there on the app, and you can stream it to your TV. So it's pretty sweet, pretty easy, and the app was actually designed from the ground up by our distribution partners at VidAngel.
Oh, cool.
All right, that's my sales pitch. That's all I'm doing for that. So me, I'm just a small town kid that thought he was going to be a pro football player, but then when he didn't grow past 6 feet tall, 180 pounds, decided that probably isn't going to pan out.
Yeah.
And always thought I would be an actor, moved to Hollywood, and just launched this acting career. And it's funny because I'm a lifelong Christian, just don't have my come to Jesus story. I was raised in the church, and, it's just been a part of my life forever. And I always thought I would go to Hollywood and do like secular projects. I wanted to be the actor in a popular sitcom, like Friends or Growing Pains or what have you. I mean, I know I'm dating myself right now by listing those sitcoms, but and then be somebody similar to what I would say Chris Pratt is doing these days. He's a very famous and powerful actor, but he kind of wears his faith on his sleeve, and I think he's doing some good work, some good kingdom work there in Hollywood. And so I always viewed that as my career trajectory, but got different plans.
Yeah.
And stayed in Minnesota, started a family, and moved to LA for a little bit, but then came back because it was just really expensive out there. It is.
It's expensive out here. We're in Northern California, and we're in one of the more expensive areas in California. And my wife and I, we moved here 4 years ago. We're in Santa Rosa. It's just so expensive, and California's tough that way. I read that you were a basketball coach. A couple different places said you were formerly a basketball coach. Is that I'm a basketball player, and I've coached a little bit, so I was super excited to hear that basketball, and you mentioned football already. But so were you a basketball player also, and where did you coach?
Yeah, no, I played basketball and football in high school. I mean, I went to a small enough high school we could do it all. I did track in the spring, so. When I coach, so here's the condensed version of that. I went to college to major in computer science because it was the wave of the future when I went to college, but it kicked my butt. I'm just not smart enough for that. And so I switched to theater because I knew that was in my blood. I wanted to do that. And I called my dad up and I said, I switched my major from computer science to theater. He said, what's your fallback going to be? And I said, oh boy, that's harsh. So then I switched to an elementary education major thinking I could teach elementary school and then I would get my coaching endorsements and be a football and basketball coach because those are two of my huge passions. But when I started teaching, elementary school got out an hour after high school got out. And so I couldn't coach because football and basketball practice is happening while I'm still in the classroom. So I ended up just coaching a traveling team for a couple of years, and that was great. I mean, because it was, it was players that were really invested in becoming better, and so we weren't necessarily a good team, but they were passionate kids that really wanted to, like I said, get better at the game, and that's where I thrive in, is just fundamentals, and I love it. And my kids now are at the age where I can I coach flag football in the summers for my boys. And
how old are your kids?
I've got, my sons are 11 and 8 years old. And I have a daughter that's 15, and I coached her in soccer a little bit, but I don't know a thing about soccer. And so that was not my forte.
I can relate to a lot of what you're saying, man. I'm finding out that you're actually somewhat similar to me with all of this. How did you get started? So you've kind of mentioned, you're acting the beginning of that, but how did you really get started in the film industry? And then you went from acting to producing and writing and directing. And so how did you make that transition?
Sure. In Minnesota, there's not a huge film community. It's a real small, and I used to think tight-knit community, but then I realized no, it's a competitive community, and there's a lot of big fish in the small pond syndrome going on here. But I did a ton of commercials and industrial projects, like the training videos that Best Buy puts out, Target, things like that. But it's not super creatively fulfilling. Even commercial work
pays the bills.
It helped pay the bills, and I was when I left teaching officially, my wife was still working outside of the home, and so I kind of essentially became the stay-at-home dad. And then I moonlit as an actor, and so got acting gigs to be a supplemental income to the primary breadwinner that was my wife.
Right. Yeah.
In a small community, you kind of, if you're not going to make a career out of acting, even if you do stage work, there's very few people that make a career. So I taught myself screenwriting and directing, and produced a couple features that were terrible, and met Dallas Jenkins, actually, the creator, one of the writers and the director of The Chosen, at a small faith-based festival close to a decade ago now. I mean, it's got to be 7, 8, 9 years ago. Yeah, and it was small enough that there wasn't a huge, line up to, oh, Dallas. It was right after he had released his movie called What If, with Kevin Sorbo, Christy Swanson.
Oh, okay. I saw that when I was looking around at some of his past projects too. I don't think I've seen that movie, but I saw that name.
At the time, I'll be honest, it was the best faith-based movie I had seen. And
cool. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah,
it's called What If, right? Is that what you said?
Called What If. Yep. And what it does, and I've told Dallas this before, is what I really appreciated about it, is it didn't dumb down the audience. And I mean that super respectfully to some of the faith-based projects that tends to just really make the faith elements overt. And I've said shove down your throat before. I don't know if that's an accurate or a pleasing picture, but the faith elements in What If are a little more subtle. I mean, there's some, very explicit Christian messages behind it, but it's not in the stilted dialogue and the overacting and stuff. I mean, Sorbo is great. Christy Swanson is phenomenal in it. I really thought that was going to be what would really put her, really launch her career again after she's known so well for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Anyway, so I met Dallas, and I told him that, I want to be this, actor, producer, director that does faith-friendly things, but not faith-based, because I didn't love faith-based entertainment at the time. And he kind of said, it's what I wanted to do too, and it didn't quite work. So
right, yeah.
You either got to make it secular or faith-based. It's really tough to find an audience when you do it in between.
So it sounds like you got connected with the show by you had an in with Dallas. You guys became friends, and when the show started, I don't know much about the beginnings. When was it first Dallas going to people saying, I want to do this show? How did you become part of the team?
Gosh, it's been almost 3 years now since well, it's been more than 3 years since he did the Shepherd for his church. It was called The Shepherd, and it's a retelling of the birth of Christ through the perspective of an outcast shepherd.
Oh, okay.
Basically. Really, really touching story, and he wrote it with one of the co-writers of The Chosen, actually, Tyler Thompson, and then shot it on a farm in Illinois for his church's Christmas Eve service. And I knew nothing of it, and didn't, Dallas and I don't know that I would say we were friends. We were acquaintances. We kept in touch. And when I moved out to LA, he was somebody that I could confide in and ask for connections. And he connected me with a handful of people out there, which was in and of itself just a tremendous blessing. And we got along, we clicked. And I remember we, right after I was hired for The Chosen, just to do some social media stuff, he had a little project to do with Dr. James Dobson, and he brought me out to do that. And it was more or less just kind of a probationary thing to see if I was a psycho on set or if I knew my way around. And when he introduced me to his dad, he actually said, Justen stayed in touch with me without being annoying.
Oh, so, nice. Yeah, hey, that's also hard to do, that middle ground, staying in touch without being annoying. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, like, I don't know, Garrett, if people listening to this are on the filmmaking side of things, or if they have any desire to be in film, that is one of the trickiest lines to toe, because you get so excited. And I went through this. I still, at times go through this. You get so excited and so passionate about something. So you write 6 pages of why you want to connect with somebody, and you send that off, and you're like, okay, I just poured my heart into this and I get no response. Well, the people you're trying to reach out to are super busy. And so you got to be really succinct, and don't, follow up every other day and say, did you get my text? Did you get my email? Did you get my request on LinkedIn?
It's like dating.
Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, I've been out of that world for so long now. I just don't even remember, thankfully.
Cool, man. Well, let me start asking you some questions about the show specifically. Knowing that you're a basketball player and coach, I have a reference that I keep telling people when I recommend this show that has to do with basketball. I like to tie things in with basketball all the time. There's a lot of times you'll see like a faith-based movie, and people be like, yeah, it's really good for a faith-based movie. And I keep thinking, The Chosen, I don't just say it's really good for a faith-based show. It's a really good show. Like, you can binge that thing in a night, and it's awesome all the way through. And the basketball reference I always make is I hate it when people say that Dirk Nowitzki is a good shooter for a big man. And I'm like, no, he's just a good shooter. Like, he's a great shooter. You just drop the big man. He's just a great shooter. And that reminds me of this show where I'm like, no, it's just a great show. It's not just great for a faith-based show. So it's something that's become one of my favorites. I've been saying for years, my wife and I talk about this all the time. I'm like, the Bible has the best stories. If somebody could just do it well, you're not going to have better stories than that. You're not going to write a better story than what's being told in Scripture, right? So when we found this, and honestly, I think season 1 came out in 2017. Is that right?
Season 1 officially came out in 18.
Okay, so I'm new to it. I honestly didn't know much about it until about 6 months ago. We found it on YouTube and started seeing some. One of my friends who's a worship leader with Gateway, he posted something on Facebook, just shared one of your posts, and we started watching it on YouTube, and we were blown away by it. So that, first of all, that's just something I wanted to share with you, is how great I think the show is, and how much people I know, they just absolutely love it. So what I want to know, though, when you're making this show, when it started, you're talking with Dallas, and he's listed as the creator of the show. What's the mission behind it, the goal set behind it? Is it to get the message of the gospel out? Is it to show that Scripture isn't boring? What's the overall mission that you guys have talked about within the crew?
Well, it's first of all, I did misspeak. It was 2019.
Oh, really? Okay.
Came out. Yeah, it's crazy how fast this has really progressed, because it feels like it's been longer than that. But 2019, we released the first 4 episodes early in the year, and then the last 4 late in the year. Boy, it's a whirlwind. And then second of all, I've got to say that as a Timberwolves fan, you even bringing up Dirk Nowitzki hits a sore spot because
Sorry,
he
man.
owned
Yeah.
the Wolves for so many years. And
Oh.
it was kind of a KG versus Dirk,
I
who's
know.
better. I always favored KG, but in hindsight, I think Dirk was the overall better player. Anyway,
Sorry about that, man. Didn't mean to bring up old wounds.
I'll get over it eventually.
My brother's a Kings fan, and he's there were some pretty good battles with the Kings and the T-Wolves too. That's you probably watched those games, right?
Oh goodness, I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah, my brother got to go to a lot of those games. His father-in-law had season tickets, so they were a lot of those. Those Kings teams were fun to watch, man. Sorry, go ahead though.
The mission. I mean, at the end of the day, we're making a TV show, and so you have to make it entertaining. You have to make it appealing to an audience. This isn't this isn't a lecture series on the Bible. It's not a Bible commentary. It is a fiction show based on the truths of the Bible. We don't change any of the truths. We fill in some of the gaps with plausible backstory. There's nothing in Scripture that says Matthew is,
has
potentially on the Asperger spectrum and riddled with OCD. There's nothing that explicitly says that. But when you read his gospel and you start in all the genealogy, you're like, it takes a special person to have to just have the discipline to write all that
and
out.
The detail and stuff. Yeah. That's been one thing I think that's mentioned probably, and I'm sure you get this, is mentioned a lot. Like, where did that decision come from? Is it just in the detail of the Gospel of Matthew that you were seeing? Hey, this makes sense.
Yeah, and it's because of the way Matthew starts his gospel, and then knowing that he was a tax collector, which we can deduce that he's a numbers guy. I mean, to be an accountant back in the first century,
without a computer.
Right. So he's got to be able to calculate and all this. Traditionally, people on the Asperger's spectrum are very good. They're almost savant-like when it comes to calculating things and very logical. And so it made sense. I wasn't involved in any of that decision. I'm just kind of regurgitating what I've heard Dallas describe. But he and Tyler Thompson and Ryan Swanson, the three writers, made that decision early on, and it's been one of the I don't want to be hyperbolic here and say that it's been one of the biggest blessings that I've witnessed, but there are so many people that write in and say, thank you for making the character of Matthew the way he is, and then they'll say something like, I have a son who's autistic, or, my daughter is on the autism spectrum, or Asperger Z, words like that. And just being able to see a character like that they can relate to and see some of the quirks. And then Paras Patel
he's amazing.
Oh my goodness, he does such an amazing job acting as Matthew, and he's just such a neat guy. Offset too, and it has become a dear friend of mine. So it's yeah. I mean, that's a long way of answering what's the vision for the show.
While we're on that topic of with Matthew, has there been any like backlash over a decision that's not specifically written in Scripture that you guys have filled in a blank with like that? Have you seen any backlash with that, or is it mostly the positive feedback that you're getting from people?
Oh goodness. I mean, there's tons of negative feedback, but overwhelmingly, I mean, 99% of the feedback has been positive, but the 1%, of course, is just traditionally louder than the 99%. I mean, that's in anything, whether it's a TV show or whether it's politics or, sports or whatever. The 1% that is negative usually sticks out a little bit more. So some of the criticism is, how can you make Matthew that? And why don't you call him Levi? I mean, why is Jesus not Yeshua? I mean, that's not, Jesus is not his name.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's sticklers for different things like that. Dallas, I tried to find the video last night. I couldn't specifically find it, but he worded it so well when he talks about this is a TV show, so there's creative. I think he says creative license. I'm not sure if that's the wording he uses. Something like that though, where it's like, so they're like basically what you said. We filled in the blanks in spots, and what I've told people is like, the blanks that they filled in have just gone further to emphasize the truths that are within Scripture, and I've appreciated that about it. It's been really cool.
And along with some of the criticism is if that leads to somebody going into Scripture to try to prove us wrong, so to say, then we still accomplished something good, something positive. It's getting people back into Scripture.
Yeah. So you've been on quite a few sets in your career. Is there anything different about being on this set with what you guys are doing, the people that are around?
There's a feeling. Our crew and cast, it's maybe made up of 50% believers, 50% non-believers. It's not like we don't have a prerequisite that you have to agree with the stories that we're telling, that you have to believe that this is true. We don't necessarily care what walk of faith you're in. We just want to make a good show. We want talented people. But even within that mixture of different backgrounds, there's a positivity in just the camaraderie and the togetherness. And, a lot of that kind of stems down from the top, Dallas and his leadership, and of course, Chad Gunderson and his team. Chad and Chris June are the heads of Out of Order Studios, which is our on-set production company. And they are just wonderful people that they happen to believe in these stories too, but they run a good operation and find good quality people to participate in the production of this show. So is there a really palpable, tangible difference between this and maybe some of the secular sets I've been on? I don't know. Some people will say there is. I've been on other sets where the camaraderie has been tremendous too, but I do believe that God is at work in this and that he is present in these in the filming of these episodes. But I believe he's present in secular sets too.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Now, we've mentioned a few times today that The Chosen is the largest crowd-funded media project in history. So what does it mean to be crowd-funded? What's the reason behind the choice to be crowd-funded? How do you raise the support? Tell us about that a little bit.
Well, why crowdfunding is because we wanted to stay out of the Hollywood system. We've seen what Hollywood tends to do with Bible projects, and not to bemoan particular filmmakers or anything like that, but you look at a movie like Noah that came out, and it takes something from the Bible and turns it into a Hollywood production. And so when you're telling the story of Jesus, you have to be really careful and not allow somebody that doesn't have the connection to the material to go in and all of a sudden turn Jesus into something that he's not.
Right, because Darren Aronofsky's an atheist, right? So like he's going into Scripture and he's not gonna read it the same way.
Right. It's telling the story based on what the audience is expecting, and we're telling a story based on the source material and completely remaining faithful to what's there, not changing anything about what's there, but just and adding some of the in between moments and backstory elements. So that's the why of crowdfunding. The how is, anybody in film is probably familiar with Kickstarter or Indiegogo, or I'm a board game guy, and Kickstarter is now the new way that board games get released. These designer board games are Kickstarter projects. So we didn't go Kickstarter or Indiegogo because our distribution partners, VidAngel, had a built-in audience already, and were able to show The Shepherd as the pilot as kind of a proof of concept. And people, once they saw The Shepherd, had such a reaction to it that they wanted to see more, and they wanted to see what Dallas and his team could really accomplish in going beyond just the birth of Christ. And so, fast forward 30 years from, the stable in Bethlehem, and now we're in, Capernaum, and Jesus is starting his ministry. People wanted to see that happen.
Right.
And we've got people clamoring for us to go into Acts and tell about Paul. They want an
That's one of my questions. I'm gonna see how much I can get you to spoil. So my wife and I actually, we bought a bundle of DVDs. We bought 12. We bought our own, and then we bought one of the bundles, and we gave them to a bunch of families. One of the things that I always joke about is that you've got the little charts on there that show how much funding you need for the next episode. And right after we bought our bundle, episode 7 was fully funded. So I like to claim, for season 2, that is, I like to claim that, season 7 is or episode 7 is because of us. So we were able to fund that one for them.
I'll try to get that put in the credits.
Yes, at the end of episode 7, it just says funded by Garrett Elliott. Now, you're all funded for season 2. I saw you're on to season 3 already, funding for that. Am I right about that?
Yeah. I mean, season 2, we the COVID stuff has added a whole another wrinkle,
Of course,
and I think we may still be covering those expenses. I'm not sure. I don't pay too close attention to that.
It probably slows the process down a lot too.
It slows things down on a daily basis, because people have to get tested regularly. But financially too, I mean, just it costs so much money to pay for these tests.
Right. So now season 2, there's more being filmed now, right? It's not completed?
Correct. Yeah, we did. We spent 6 weeks in Utah at an amazing set, a recreation of Jerusalem near Goshen, Utah. And now the second half of season 2, which is a little misleading. It's not like we shot 2 episodes in Utah. Now we're shooting the rest of the episodes in Texas. I mean, you shoot bits and pieces of each episode depending on where you're at. So we're finishing season 2 in Texas and should wrap right around the beginning of March.
Okay.
And then the goal is to get an episode out. And, hopefully episode 1 of season 2 will be ready by about Easter time.
Sweet. That's what I was wondering. With the timeline, I was wondering if that was the goal. So it sounds like you'll do an episode at a time. It's not just like one big dump of all 8 episodes like some shows do.
We don't know for sure yet what the plan is going to be. God, through this whole project, God has really been specific about providing manna for the day and not necessarily allowing us to store up our plans, our finances, our resources, any of that. It's been kind of hey, guys, trust me, rely on me daily. Don't get too far ahead of yourselves. So even though we want to release season 2, episode 1 by Easter, we're not locked into that.
Yeah.
And we don't know, when the rest of the season will be released. We don't know how it's going to be released. At this point, let's focus on getting them shot. It's a miracle that we're even in production right now with all the COVID restrictions and everything. And just the year that was 2020 and the turmoil that it produced, the fact that we're still making this show and the fact that I have a job and the job is doing something that I truly love and it's making a difference in the world. I mean, my goodness, I don't underestimate just how blessed I truly am.
Yeah. That reminds me, you'd mentioned in one of the videos I saw on the social media, how at the beginning of your career, you were so focused on making it, is how you put it, right? Do you ever look at it now and go, this is making it? You're doing something that you love to do, and you're doing it for making an eternal difference with this by sharing Christ with people. Do you ever look at it like that?
I don't. The irony is, and I realized this quite a while ago. I used to do a little blog years ago, and I think in one of those blogs I even mentioned that I know that I will never ever look down and say I made it, because there's always the next project. There's always the next piece of witnessing that I can do. I really, some of what I do on set is just communicate with investors when they come to visit. And at times that's just sitting with them and listening. And one of the gifts God has given me is the gift of empathy, which is also a curse at times, but I can sit with somebody and just cry with them as they're telling me a story that just wrecks me, whether it's a recent death in the family or multiple deaths or things like that. I mean, people that I've gotten to know because of The Chosen that now have passed away. I mean, it's like, I feel so interconnected to all these people and all their stories. And so for me, making it isn't necessarily getting a career where I'm rich or famous or recognizable, all that stuff. That doesn't matter. Never really did. What matters to me is, am I still being A, creatively challenged, and B, finding a way to use my creativity to witness to other people and to be a blessing to other people.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool. So now I want to ask you real quick. So you mentioned that VidAngel's role in it is they're the distribution partners. Is that right?
Yeah.
So is that going to be the VidAngel role? Is that going to take over the YouTube thing, or is it still going to air on YouTube?
The YouTube thing wasn't ever designed. Again, to circle back to the way God has been providing daily without necessarily allowing us to store up. We decided to release the episodes on YouTube right when the pandemic hit. A number of factors went into that decision, but we did it as live streams, and Dallas got on and introduced the episodes. At the end of the episode, he would interview somebody from within the project, and our intention was to leave them up on YouTube for a couple weeks. Immediately when we released them free on YouTube for anybody in the world to watch, the income that the show started to receive went up. So it's counterintuitive from a business standpoint, but again, it's a God thing. Dallas and his wife Amanda talk about impossible math, and it harkens back to the loaves and fishes, how you can bring the loaves and fish and feed 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fish. Somehow we're feeding more people now after releasing the shows for free and having this app where people can watch it for free. So giving it away has actually increased the revenue that the show has gotten, which in turn allowed us to go into production of season 2
right
a little bit sooner than we would have ever anticipated, following the particular business model that we're on.
Right. And I mean, like my family's a testament to that, because we found it on YouTube. And watched the first, I forget how many episodes we got into it before we really binged it, and watched the whole thing. But we were the ones found on YouTube. And we were like, we're hearing Dallas talk about, if you want to see more of this stuff, you can support us here. And we're like, yeah, we want to see more made like this. This is awesome. And that was what got us to go, let's get a bundle of DVDs and, let's encourage, because everybody especially during the first part of COVID, the amount of TV Netflix shows being streamed and stuff is just skyrocketed, because everybody's just sitting around doing nothing. A lot of people are out of work. So we're like, let's encourage our friends to watch this instead of watching, whatever shows are coming out. Just because it's like, I mean, again, I could go on and on about how much I recommend this show. And people that know me know that I do go on and on about that. So are you able to share anything with us about season 2, or are you guys keeping that under wraps?
Let's see. So the dinosaurs show up in episode 3, and then the alien robots episode 5. But I can't tell you too much more.
So it's an MCU crossover. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know what MCU is. Am I showing my age again?
Oh, just Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Marvel. Oh, okay.
You know Marvel. There's no way you don't know Marvel.
I mean, I'm familiar with it, but I couldn't tell you if like, I don't know which Avengers is. Sure. Okay, I don't know any of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, you're making a show about the best superhero of all, right? So
exactly.
You got that.
And he doesn't have to wear a cape or have any superpowers, because he actually does. But,
yeah.
No, I mean, season 2 really dives into the relationship that the disciples have between each other, and one of the big. Season 1 had several, iconic biblical moments, miracles. We had the healing of the paralytic, the healing of the leper,
the conversation with Nicodemus.
And the miracle of the fish. I mean, a lot of iconic biblical moments. Season 2 isn't as much of that, but it's more if Matthew could plausibly have been the tax collector for Simon and his brother Andrew, and now all of a sudden they're thrust together to work together. What's
the relationship like?
It's like, I mean, what if Dirk and KG had to be teammates all of a sudden after, or DeMarcus Cousins and KG for crying out loud? What if they had to be teammates?
Yeah.
There's conflict. There's going to be conflict.
Right.
And so we explore a lot of that. And one of the penultimate scenes, or one of the most recognizable moments in season 2, is going to be the Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount.
Okay.
And that's one of our big shoots coming up in February. So
great.
Yeah,
that's a great, I mean, not a spoiler, but a great insider look at what we're going to be seeing. I want to talk about the casting. I know I want to be respectful of your time too, so I know we don't have too much more time here. I don't know how involved you were in casting. It sounds like you've built some pretty good relationships with some of the guys that are portraying the characters. But the casting, I don't know how much I can say about that being just like so spot on. Really impressed with how they nailed it. Now, Jonathan Rooney, let's start there, just because he portrays Jesus. I was trying to look into that a little bit. It sounds like he had worked with Dallas prior. I think that's what I was thinking. I think there was an Easter video or something that he worked on with Dallas, or maybe it was the Christmas one that you've already talked about. I'm not sure. Do you know?
No, it was. I don't remember what the final title is. I think the final title is The Two Thieves.
Mm-hmm.
I think the working title was Once We Were Slaves. But anyway, Jonathan auditioned to play one of the two men on either side of Jesus on the cross, and they were meaty roles, but Dallas just thought, no, man, you're Jesus.
He's amazing, man. He's so good at it.
And for that short, which is available, so yeah, it's The Two Thieves. Yep, and it's on Amazon Prime, actually.
Oh, cool.
It's a 25-30 minute short, but it's really well done, of course, in Dallas's style of just trying to make it as authentic as possible and make you feel like you're really there. But Jesus is kind of a secondary character. It's more about the thieves that were on either side of him.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And so Jonathan was disappointed that he didn't get one of the lead roles, but because of that relationship that was established then, and then Jonathan played Jesus for Dallas in another short project for his church, I think, between The Two Thieves and The Chosen. He wasn't in The Shepherd. Jesus was a little too young. We couldn't do the makeup well enough to make Jonathan look like a newborn.
Yeah. CGI would have been expensive for that, huh?
Yeah, the CGI, that's just out of the budget at the time. So no, Dallas and Jonathan had a relationship, and it was Jonathan's role from the beginning, and so I had zero to do with any of the casting decisions.
Okay.
But when it came time to do some of the auditions, some of the roles that hadn't been cast yet before we started shooting in Texas for the first season, Mary Magdalene hadn't been cast yet. And because of my acting background, Dallas asked if I could be at the auditions and be the reader opposite of the people auditioning. Oh, cool. And so awesome. Liz Tabish came in to read for Mary Magdalene and her alter ego, so to say. And, spoiler alert, episode 1, she goes by a different name and has some issues. But I remember that audition just bawling with Liz as she was reading, as I was reading opposite her. We both just started crying. And it's been something that we've actually maintained throughout the duration of the show. A lot of the behind-the-scenes interviews that we do, I'll be the one off camera asking the questions. And then even some of the still photography, I'm there if we need to evoke a particular emotion. And if I need Liz to cry, I mean, there's something there that she relates to that emotionally it just grips her. And so whether that's just an actor's blood type of thing, and right, I've connected that way with some of our newer actors too, and just this sounds like it's a boastful thing. I don't mean it to be that at all. It's just one of the gifts God has given me, again, is empathy and the ability to connect with people on an emotional level. And then you layer that on top of being a creative type with these other creative types. I mean, we're already emotionally unstable to begin with. So if I need to bring out some of that instability, God has gifted me with the means to do that, just in the words or a facial expression.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. One of the things that stands out to me about this, just on the topic of Jonathan portraying Jesus, I love how much of the human side we see of him, making the jokes with some of his friends and having fun. And, the wedding episode, I think, has become, at least some of the people I know that watch it, their favorite episode's the wedding episode, and seeing him have fun with his friends and being at that party. And you could just see how well Jonathan, and it speaks a lot to the whole crew, not just, I know it's a team effort here. You've got all the people that are making things happen. But it speaks a lot to the crew and Jonathan himself, just being able to really portray how much that Jesus loves the people and loves to be with them and loves his friends. And he really, really cares about them. As a believer, what was it like for you to see that being played out in the flesh and not just reading it in scripture, but seeing it portrayed?
I think it took me a whole 1 or 2 days before I'm crying on set.
Oh man.
We shot episode 3 the very first week. Most of episode 3 with the kids and Jesus at the campsite was done the very first week.
My son's favorite episode, by the way.
Yeah. And it's the little things that got me. Watching Jonathan as Jesus sit around the campfire and just look at these kids with his eyes, and that's what Jonathan
his eyes,
does.
dude. His eyes are. I've seen it. People mention it too. Like the way he communicates non-verbally is phenomenal. It's so good.
Yeah, and that to me as an actor, that's what impresses me the most. When I'm involved in a casting process, I'm more interested in what the eyes are doing when you're not talking than anything else. And Jonathan he's reacting with his eyes. It's not an over-exaggerated head nod like people like to do on stage.
Like I'm doing right now on the video. Oh yeah.
But no, it really comes down to the way people truly emote when they're being authentic. And then that's the thing that Jonathan does so well, is he brings such an authenticity to it. And so one of those first days of shooting, and I'm watching him just react, and he's getting, his eyes are welling up just a little bit because he's so happy with the children being able to recite the Shema, the prayer. And I'm not like keeled over bawling, but I'm starting to have that where my shoulders are starting to go up and down a little bit, and I'm trying so hard to be a manly man and not start crying, but it's just is this really how it was? Is this really how it could be? And when I've said this before, and I don't know if this is a good tangent or not, but I don't care if Jesus is white, black, olive-skinned, or if he has porcupine quills all over his body. When I see him, I'm going to hug him in spite of all of that because of who he is inside. And what I was seeing through Jonathan's portrayal of Jesus is what I believe Jesus is going to be. And so those were the moments that got me right from the beginning. And there were many other times that I found myself crying like a wuss on set.
Yeah, I mean, there's scene after scene within the show that it's emotional. And like another one, so one of my favorite scenes. Now, my favorite scene to watch is the way, the scene when the fish and the boat, and he says, "Cast your net on the other side," and the guys all run across the water and trying to help him and stuff, and like just seeing, and especially the trailers. By the way, I don't know who puts the trailers together for the show. They're awesome. They're so fun to watch. Just even the trailers, the music's amazing. It's so cool to see all of that. But that was one of my favorite scenes, watching that those guys run across the water. But I think the one that ends up being my favorite scene is Nicodemus and Jesus having that conversation. One, if not the most well-known verse in the Bible, comes out in that John 3 conversation. But I want to talk before we go here. I wanted to ask you about Eric Avari, because Eric is there's a podcast I listen to called The Rewatchables, and they have the categories. They'll break down a movie and they have the categories, and one of them is the best that guy. And Eric is one of those guys where I honestly didn't know his name until he did The Chosen, but I've seen him in tons of stuff, right? He shows up everywhere, and he's been in big movies, The Mummy and Planet of the Apes and the Sandler one, Mr. Deeds. And so he's one of these guys that people see it, and he's a recognizable face already because he's been in huge, blockbuster movies. So I want to talk about Eric. Just how did he get involved? Was that a guy you guys went to? Was he an audition? Did he come to you? What was that process?
Dallas's son, Sam, suggested Eric Avari.
No way. That's awesome. How old is his son?
He's a college freshman now, or maybe sophomore.
So would have been like a junior high or high school kid when he suggested it.
He was in high school. It was still, the timeline is remarkably short here. It was
well, he might have a future in casting, I guess, because Eric does amazing at that role. And the way that, like Nicodemus, we don't know much about Nicodemus. So like just seeing that whole storyline play out, he brought me to tears a few times, especially when, he's standing behind the wall and the disciples they're all meeting up to leave and he's behind the wall and he's crying. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, dude, this guy, he got me, it's amazing. But, his son, what about Eric? Was his son like, hey, you got to pick this guy?
He felt like he was the right person for the role. And so Dallas wrote up a kind letter, sent him the script. And at that point, Eric had, for all intents and purposes, pretty much retired from acting and was out of Hollywood. And in an interview that I did with him, he talked about how he was really getting tired of all the violence and hate that Hollywood was kind of putting out there. And so he left it, and then he came across this script that was complete opposite.
Yeah.
Just about love and redemptive quality. And so he signed on, and Eric is just a kind-hearted human being that I got along with well. And again, me as an actor, reading lines with Eric, just randomly, if he was standing, before a take or something, I mean, every once in a while he would come just say, hey, Justen, can you, can we just go through these lines a little bit quick? And I'm standing there opposite of, a 40-year screen vet who's just a tremendous actor. And I'm just kind of like, this is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, he's great, man. I think it speaks a lot to him to be able to, because you look at him, he's in Mr. Deeds, and he's just he's a goofball in Mr. Deeds, right? Then you look at him playing Nicodemus and you're like, homeboy's got range. Like this is be able to do that different of projects. It's just really, really awesome. So, I think we're out of time here, but my son, who's 5 years old, he has a question for you. He's not here, but he came to me last night. I'm doing some little bit of research last night and trying to come up with some good questions to ask you and stuff. And he comes in, he's supposed to be asleep. It's like 10 o'clock and he walks into me and he goes, I see him. I'm like, bud, you're supposed to be in bed. And he goes, but Dad, I've got a question for the guy that you're going to talk to tomorrow. And I was like, okay, what's your question? So he said, please ask him this. So his question is this: what's your favorite episode of The Chosen?
I still think my favorite episode is episode 5, The Wedding. And I'm probably biased a little bit because I have such fond memories of shooting it. The wedding dance scene was the last night of our season 1 shooting. And we shot till 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And then I had a plane to catch, and I actually rode to the airport with another of our producers, and we got there with, maybe 45 minutes to spare. So it was that tight of a window. But I just remember launching into this music, and it was this temp music that just this most Jewish music I've ever heard in my life. And everybody is dancing and I'm counting them in. And it's like, it was so joy-filled, and everybody, I guess I can't say everybody in any certainty, but it seemed like everybody was in just such good spirits, and it felt like a legitimate celebration. And I just have such fond memories of that. And I cry every time we wrap because it means I'm saying goodbye to my family, my on-set family, even though I'm so overjoyed that I get to get back to my real family. It's that bittersweet moment of having to say goodbye to dear friends.
Well, to end this, to conclude this here, first of all, thank you so much for taking this time. I really appreciate it. Super fun for me to be able to do this. Honestly, it's the first time I've done any kind of interview with somebody I didn't already know a little bit. So Hopefully I did all right, man. Got some good
No,
questions there.
this was great. I appreciate the research that you did, and you asked great questions.
Oh, good.
So
Thanks,
hopefully
man.
I didn't ramble too much.
No, you don't no, not rambling at all. You did at the end of your video last night that I was watching last night. You do a Dallas impression where you recommend all of the different ways you can watch it and like on social media and stuff. So maybe that'd be a good way to end. What do you think?
Well, I can't do it without the visual, and people have to have the frame of reference to what I was imitating.
Well, then let us know. How can people be watching The Chosen? What's the best way to look into it more if they're curious about it?
Yeah, again, everything just starts with our app. It's universal. It's available for Apple devices. It's available for Android devices. Just search The Chosen wherever you get apps, whether it's Google Play or the App Store or whatever means you get apps overseas. I don't even know where you can all get apps, but
to that point, it's in a bunch of languages on the app, right?
It is, yeah. I mean, it has been dubbed into, I want to say 6 or 7 languages. I mean, Spanish, Portuguese,
Mandarin,
Hindi,
right?
Arabic, yeah. I mean, and it's been subtitled in like 60 or 70. I mean, you can watch it and name the language, and it's probably available in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, that's where it starts. The Chosen. If you can't remember that, thechosen.tv is our website, and that's the launch pad for finding anything else that you want. I mean, we have merch, all that, sweatshirts, t-shirts, hats, masks, all that stuff.
The Binge Jesus shirts. I've seen a few people with those now. Those are getting out there.
Yeah, those are sold out, but that was a really popular hot item. Maybe it'll come back.
Get used to different. That's another one, right?
Yep.
Yeah, there's some great stuff, man. There's some really cool stuff on there.
And all of that helps support the show. We're not making a ton of money ourselves. All of the income right now is being funneled back into the production of the show, the infrastructure of the show. And so, for you buying that bundle of 12 DVDs, everything above and beyond the cost of the actual DVD is going into the production of future seasons of the show. So because of your purchase, we got to shoot episode 7 of season 2.
Well, yeah, I wanted you to thank you for giving me credit for that. I was hoping you'd do that. Well, hey, thank you so much, Justen. I really appreciate it, man. We'll be praying for you guys as you continue shooting season 2, and I can't wait to see more, man. It's great that you guys are doing this. I really appreciate the passion you have for it. So thanks so much for doing this, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Garrett. Thanks for your support, and stay in touch.
All right, man. Have a good day.
All right, you too, man.
Thank you so much for listening today to the Spring Hills Podcast. That was Justen Overlander, the associate producer of The Chosen. So again, Caitlin and I are going to be doing a small group this semester where we watch each episode of The Chosen. Season 1 is out. It's 8 episodes. We're going to watch an episode a week and then discuss it. We're going to watch it in the auditorium on the big screen with the loudspeakers and everything, so it'll feel like a movie theater. It'll be awesome. We're going to do this on Thursday nights at 5 p.m., and small groups start the week of February 7th. So that's coming up here. I think signups are starting in just a few weeks. So if you want to join us for that, go for it. If you'd like to join us, but you want to watch the show before then, you can watch it again on the app. You can download that in the App Store. Or if you'd like to save it to see it for the first time on the big screen there in the auditorium, that'd be great as well. So it's going to be a really cool small group. We'll discuss all of the biblical truths within the show. And just like you heard in this interview, there are some things that are kind of filling in the blanks of things we don't know about certain characters within the Bible. So we'll discuss those as well. We'll find out, look into why they made the choices they made, that kind of thing. So it's going to be great. Sign up for that small group. Again, it'll be Thursday nights at 5 p.m. in the auditorium. It's going to be so much fun, so I can't wait for that. All right, everybody, have a wonderful week. We'll see you next weekend at church.